What's up, you guys? Ross Sapp, FightfulMMA.com here. Going to give you a bit of a preview of this weekend's UFC 247 show. Reminder, FightfulMMA.com has all of your MMA news. And even better than that, great live coverage with a ton of people commenting throughout the show. We get thousands of comments on these pay-per-view shows. We do predictions ahead of that on our Pick'em. Join in, and if you're listening on the YouTube channel, leave a thumbs up, subscribe, comment your picks on the fight below. I'm going to go ahead and give you some betting odds and some general thoughts on this show. It's one of those UFC shows where they have three pretty good fights, and the rest is an utter trash fire of just uninteresting matchups, at least from a relevance perspective. There are some that aren't so bad, but let's go ahead and kick you off. Austin Lingo, a minus 240 against the plus 200. Youssef Zalal. You have Andre Ewell, a minus 125 against the plus 105. Jonathan Martinez. The thing about Andre Ewell is I thought he was going to be a top 15 guy in the division, and it just hasn't panned out for him. He's going to need to beat Jonathan Martinez in this bantamweight fight if he wants to, I think, maybe ever get to that level, because Jonathan Martinez has won 2 in a row. Andre Ewell has stuttered a lot here and there. So that one's not a tough one for me to pick. I have Andre Ewell winning that, but I think he needs to win that. Domingo Pilarte, a minus 125 against Journey Newson, who is a plus 105. Mario Batista, a plus 105 underdog against Miles Johns, the minus 125. Miles Johns is undefeated. Another bantamweight fight. It looks like we have back-to-back-to-back bantamweight fights, which is particularly interesting how heavy they went on bantamweight fights back-to-back-to-back when there are no backup light heavyweights on this show that I'm aware of. There are backup women's flyweights, but no backup heavyweights on this show. So a little bit weird to me that they went that route, but they could do a lot worse, I guess. I mean, I don't exactly think you're going to see Trevin Giles, who's a minus 140, or Antonio Arroyo, a plus 120 underdog. Middleweight's just going to halt cutting weight and get a light heavyweight title shot against Jon Jones if something happens to Reyes. But it's a little curious to me, considering so many of the issues that Jon Jones has faced and just the overall unpredictability of a UFC fight week, that they went so heavy on bantamweights and didn't run a backup light heavyweight. Now I say heavy, but it's only 3 fights, but still. Miles Johns is undefeated. He came off the Contender Series last year. He came back, I think he turned around and fought less than 3 months later and beat Cole Smith. And Mario Batista got beaten, but he got beaten early by Corey Sandhagen. Like, that was not a... he was a plus 430 in that fight. He wasn't supposed to win that fight, and he fell victim to, quite frankly, one of the best submissions of the year from Corey Sandhagen. But he came back, he beat Jinso Sun. He was an underdog there too, had a great fight of the night. So at the very least, based on what we've seen out of him in his UFC career, Mario Batista is going to be involved in something exciting. That's really the only bit of track record that we have within the UFC of any consistency, because he wasn't going to beat Sandhagen, man, and he wasn't supposed to either. I don't think Katlyn Williams at a plus 220 is supposed to defeat the minus 260 Alex Morono. I think that line is where it is, or where it should be. Not to write Katlyn Williams off or anything like that. He's had a really good go of it in 2019. He's done a little bit of everything. And that says a lot to me. When you see fighters that knock a guy out in 24 seconds, when they submit a guy with 1 second left in the round, when they take somebody to the scorecards, and they do that all within a year, well, that shows me that they're at least versatile. They're at least competent in that regard. And we know Alex Morono is. He's won 4 of his last 5. He's beaten Max Griffin, Zach Attal, Keenan Song, Josh Berkman. He's beaten some guys. Now, he lost to Jordan Meehan a couple years back, but since then has just done fantastically and was supposed to face Diego Lima here, but ended up getting Katlyn Williams, and I think Katlyn Williams is a pretty good call-up for the UFC. I don't think this will be a wasteful one. It's a guy that probably should be in the UFC. Caleb Williams had a really good amateur career too. He fought as an amateur for a couple years before turning pro, but he fought 14 times, won 11 of those fights. So I know that a lot of people look at the 9-1 record. Guys fought like 30 times, almost, or maybe 25 times. So if he pulled off an upset, it wouldn't surprise me. He's probably one of my I got 5 on it. Up next, another perhaps I got 5 on it. Plus 275 Lauren Murphy against the minus 335 Andrea Lee. Now here's the thing. Both of these women should make championship weight. No ifs, ands, or buts. Both women should make championship weight. You gotta. You never know what'll happen. If Valentina Shevchenko, if something happens to her, no title fight. They ain't doing an interim. If something happens to Katlyn Chookagian, one of these two women are gonna get the call. Now, I know that Andrea Lee just lost to Joanne Calderwood, but Lauren Murphy's coming off of a win over Mara Romero Barella, which is a nice one. I didn't expect her to win that fight. She's won 2 of her last 3. I do think that Andrea Lee is the bigger name, and it was a split decision against Joanne Calderwood. Honestly, and the UFC does not care if you're coming off a loss. But still, I think the line is right for this. Maybe I would have it at a minus 225 instead of a minus 335. But I think Andrea Lee's going to win this fight. I think she is the better fighter. She won her first 3 UFC fights. They were not exactly fights that the UFC steps up and says, hey, let's give her a title shot. The fight against Veronica Macedo was awesome. It was fun. And she was finishing people in Invicta and LFA and Legacy and all that stuff. But not so much in the UFC. Lauren Murphy, on the other hand, when she does win, she has shown in the UFC that she can and will finish. Sometimes it just takes her to the 3rd round to do so. I got Andrea Lee earning the win here. I like her, and if something happens to Chookagian, I just think that Andrea Lee is going to be the one to step in. I mentioned Trevin Giles, minus 140. Antonio Arroyo, a plus 120. I like this one where it is too. Trevin has to win this fight to stay in the UFC. He came in, he won his first 2 fights, but they're putting him against a guy that I think is in Antonio Arroyo that also lost his first UFC fight. He won 2 Contender Series fights, so they like him in that regard. But since then has not had luck. Kevin Holland had to pull out of their planned fight. Alessio Di Chirico pulled out of their fight, and then he ended up facing Andre Muniz on late notice and canceled, moved. He's had trouble getting in the or at least keeping a consistent opponent. But he's turning around 3 months later and facing Trevin Giles, and quite frankly, is a fight where both guys need it to win. And as I mentioned earlier, if something happens to Dom Reyes, one of these guys aren't stepping in. They're not going to say, hey, guys that don't win, stop cutting weight. Let's do a title fight. I mean, maybe they should have rethought that. Well, I am very excited for Derrick Lewis of minus 250 against the plus 210 Ilir Latifi. Oh, boy. Ilir Latifi not having a great go of it lately. Just a rough go of it. This guy, man. So, he had to pull from the Ovent St. Preux fight. They rescheduled it for a month later. He pulled from the Glover Teixeira fight. He had to fight Corey Anderson. Got beaten. Then he had a back injury about 6 months later. Couldn't get in there against Ozdemir. There were visa issues just a couple months later. Then they moved it to a week after it was supposed to happen, and he lost. So now he's moving up, facing Derrick Lewis, because at this point, you've lost 2 in a row. You're 36 years old. Just stop cutting the weight. Compete against heavyweights. And Derrick Lewis is Derrick Lewis, man, but we haven't seen the Derrick Lewis that we know and love in his last 3 fights. He beat Blagoy Ivanov, and that's an awesome win. It really is. an outstanding win in my estimation. But we saw him get finished by Junior Dos Santos. We saw him get finished by Daniel Cormier. We're not going to pretend like he was looking great against Volkov before he slugged him. He did beat Francis Ngannou, so that's cool. The thing is about Derrick Lewis, you can never count him out of a fight. One series of punches will do it, and even if his gas tank looks like it's empty, and it might be empty, he might not have anything left in the tank, he's still going to throw like he does. And if you show him any sense of weakness and he connects with your jaw, he's going to follow up with that. Now, the game for Ilir Latifi is obvious. He's going to try to wrestle, and he should try to wrestle. But the interesting thing about this fight is they put it first on the pay-per-view. Because quite honestly, damn, nobody's going to pay attention to that first hour unless this is there. Now, there's a heavyweight fight. Oh my God. Tapology has Justin Tafa ranked the number 129th heavyweight in the world. He's a plus 200 against Juan Adams, who is 5-2 and is at least athletic, but has lost 2 fights in a row. Justin Tafa is 0-1 in his UFC career. Why didn't they just add something else to this? Now, I just don't get it, man. I just don't get it, man. I know OSP and Ryan Spahn was supposed to happen on this show. They were supposed to have Jimmy Rivera and Marlon Vera. They were supposed to have Alex Morono and Diego Lima, and that one got changed a little bit. But, oh my God, man. If this did not have Jon Jones at the top of it, Valentina Shevchenko right underneath, that's it. It's a 3-person show because you hope that people still care about Derrick Lewis. I think Juan Adams is going to win this fight. I think. Hopefully it ends in 1 round. Hopefully it ends in 1 round because we don't need to wait until midnight for Valentina Shevchenko to get into the cage. We don't need that, man. Damn. Dan Ige, a plus 120 against Mirsad Bektic. Now here's the thing. This isn't a bad fight at all. By all means, it's probably a top 15 fight, but you've got Dan Ige, who's won 4 of his 4 straight fights in the UFC. He did get beat by Julio Arce. It was 2 years ago he got beat by Julio Arce. He's one of those guys that if he gets it to the ground, you're in trouble. He was able to tap out Danny Henry in a minute. He was able to finish Mike Santiago with ground and pound in under a minute, I think. He beat Kevin Aguilar, and that was a hell of a win for him. Even though the odds were almost even for that Kevin Aguilar fight, I really liked that win for him. I thought that was a good one because he's not being put in there against guys that he's set to blow away. Even when he beat Luis Gomez on Dana White's Contender Series, he was a slight underdog. It was near even, but it was a slight underdog. Arce, Santiago, Griffin, Henry, Aguilar, all these fights are like a minus 180 to plus like 115 swing on them. Like pretty close. Pretty close. And the Mirsad Bektic fight is near even odds right now. Bektic did run into Josh Emmett in July. But before that, he was looking real good when he could get into the cage. He pulled out of the Moicano fight. He couldn't get in the cage in October 2016 because his opponents kept getting injured. I know that he had to pull out of the Kawajiri fight in late 2015. Moicano had pulled out in the middle of 2015 and he ended up beating Martins. There was a situation in, I want to say 2014, where he and his opponent got hurt. He was supposed to fight Max Holloway at one point. He got hurt. He's had like 8 fights canceled, for better or for worse. Half on him, half on somebody else. But before the Emmett loss, he beat Pepe and with a beautiful body punch, and beat Ricardo Lamas via split decision. But the thing is, he's fought 1 time in the last year and a half. 1 time in the last year and a half, and he lost. Now, let's go back I don't know, 3+ years ago. Since November 2016, the man has only fought 4 times, and that's just not quite as active as a guy like Dan Ige, who is getting in there 2 to 3 times every single year since then. I mean, Ige has fought like 8 times in that period, twice as much. I gotta go with Ige here. Gotta go with him. Valentina Shevchenko, a minus 1,100 against the plus 700 Katlyn Chookagian. You gotta put 5 on it. Katlyn Chookagian, even though I don't have her winning this, is the kind of fighter that can frustrate you. She has no finishes in the UFC. She has 6 wins in the UFC. Both of her losses were split decisions. It could have went either way. She did earn this title shot. We're not going to pretend like it was exciting getting there. We're not going to pretend like she had the greatest fights in the world. But she beat Joanne Calderwood. She beat Alexis Davis. She beat Reyes. She beat Irene Aldana. She has some good wins. Now, those Jessica Ai and Liz Carmouche fights were very close. I don't think she's going to win this. I think Valentina Shevchenko has a lot of tools. The thing with Chookagian is her reach it has played to her advantage. She's 5'9". She has a 66-inch reach. Shevchenko is like 4 or 5 inches shorter than her, but the reach is only like a half an inch difference. Now, what does reach mean in MMA? Hell if I know. Leg reach has something to do with it too. But man, I remember it was evident in 2014 when Katlyn Chookagian was an amateur that she was going to be good. I watched Katlyn Chookagian beat a woman by the name of Gina Elliott, who fights locally here in Kentucky. I saw her beat Vanessa Demopoulos in 2013. And I was like, okay, this is somebody that's probably going to be in the UFC in a few years. She was in the UFC 2 years after she was fighting as an amateur. It's unbelievable. And she wasn't just beating scrubs as an amateur. You know, Andrea Lee on the prelims, who I talk about maybe replacing her if some terrible weight cut situation unfolds, she was beating Andrea Lee on the prelim on the amateur circuit. She was 6-0. A lot of the women that you fight on the amateur circuit in MMA, you're going to run into in the pro circuit. That's just the way it is. The pool isn't quite as large. She's got great wins over Sijara Eubanks too. Not a cakewalk. I don't see this as a minus 1,100 cakewalk for Valentina Shevchenko. I do have her winning. Quite honestly, if I had to rank them all time, I think that Valentina Shevchenko is the second best women's MMA fighter of all time. My rankings go as followed. Top 5. Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, Chris Cyborg, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Ronda Rousey. You can flip around 4 and 5 if you want. Those are my top 5. I think Valentina Shevchenko is that good. She has 2 losses. Well, let's take a look at her resume. Valentina Shevchenko beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Well, who is Joanna Jędrzejczyk? Well, she's the greatest 115-pound fighter ever. They fought at 125. Shevchenko beat her. Shevchenko is the greatest 125-pound fighter of all time. Make no mistake about it. The greatest of all time. And became the flyweight champion in beating Joanna. And has since beaten Liz Carmouche, who gave a hell of a fight to Ronda Rousey. Beat Jessica Ai. But this is her biggest test, I think. But let's keep going. She beat Holly Holm. Well, who the hell is Holly Holm? Former UFC bantamweight champion, who quite frankly could have been the UFC featherweight champion. Well, all right then. Her only losses are to the greatest women's MMA fighter ever and current UFC bantamweight and featherweight champion Amanda Nunes. So quite frankly, we have seen Valentina Shevchenko hang in there or beat the greatest 115, 125s, 135s, 145s of all time. Of all time. It's pretty impressive. Jon Jones is also impressive, but he is a plus 450 against Dom Reyes, a plus 360. Reyes is undefeated. Jon Jones should be. You know the drill with Jon Jones. He is maybe the greatest MMA fighter of all time. You can say what you want about anything you want of him, but Dom Reyes took a path to get here, man. Early on, he was beating guys like Joachim Christensen and Jeremy Kimball, but man, when he's beating Jared Cannonier, that's a good win. When he's beating Ovent St. Preux, Okan Ozdemir, Chris Weidman, those are good wins. Those are good wins. Altogether, throughout pro and amateur, I believe he's like 16-0. And him beating Chris Weidman in the fashion that he did got him that fight. Now, the Ozdemir fight was close. The Ozdemir fight was very close. But he was finishing people before that, too. First round. Jon Jones needs somebody to bring the pressure to him. If you allow Jon Jones to play the Jon Jones game, well, that's going to be bad news. That's when Jon Jones gets into his comfort zone, kicks you in the knee, takes you down, lays on you, lands some strikes. Jon Jones is rarely pressured. Rarely pressured. And the last time he was Thiago Santos, and that worked out well for Santos, all things considered. Thiago Santos almost won that fight. Now, will it work for everybody? No, but for Dominic Reyes' skill set, that's your best option, buddy. That's what you got. Good to see Jones active in the early part of 2020. He had 2 fights last year. He had 1 in 2018. It's amazing through all the suspensions. He's had several year-long suspensions. There hasn't been a single year Jon Jones hasn't fought. It's just gone are the days of him fighting 3 times in an actual year. Now, he did fight 3. He fought 3 times in 8 months. 3 times in really 7 months. When he beat Gustafsson in December 18, beat Anthony Smith a couple months later, and then 4 months later he came back and fought Santos and took a well-deserved break after that, I thought. Because he came back to his division and was like, all right, all these guys here, who do we got? Anthony Smith? Let's knock him, let's finish him. Not finish him, but knock him out of the contention. Alexander Gustafsson, let's maybe retire that man. Thiago Santos, he bumped up from middleweight like Anthony Smith. I'll take him too. Johnny Walker, got to go win some fights, buddy. You got close, but no cigar. So who's left? Well, we got Dom Reyes. Bring Dom Reyes on. I respect this about Jon Jones. He could very, very easily go to heavyweight. And a lot of people would be like, yeah, sure, of course. Why not? Go to heavyweight. But Jon Jones is saying, no, you know what? I want to clear out my division. There's still some contenders here. Well, when he said there were still some contenders here, that was a year ago. He's been clearing them out. He's been taking them to school, man. Now, Corey Anderson fights next week. If he wins, that's another one. And the thing is, Jon Jones does not back down from a challenge. Jon Jones does not say, oh, you know what? I don't think he's worthy. You don't really ever see that out of Jon Jones. It is the anti-Henry Cejudo. I can't stand Henry Cejudo for that. He wants to fight anybody that doesn't win, and that drives me up a wall. Say what you want about Jon Jones. Jon Jones is fighting the contenders. Jon Jones is doing whatever it is that he can to keep that division churning, to keep it going. And up next, if he wins this, it's got to be Corey Anderson. Anderson's won 4 in a row. He beat Johnny Walker, Glover Teixeira, Patrick Cummins, Ilir Latifi. And if he beats Jan Blachowicz, and you better believe the UFC wants him to, then it's got to be Corey Anderson. If Blachowicz wins, it's probably him because he's won 6 of his last 7, including Jacare and Rockhold and Krylov, Manawa, Cannonier. He's beaten a lot of good guys. Now, there are some guys like Rockhold and Weidman who the UFC would probably like to win, but they need to win. Can't put the front runners in there, dude. We will have a post-show podcast or maybe a watch-along. I'll determine that towards the end of the week. Let me know what you guys want. Do you want to watch along for the main event? Do you want a post-show review? I'm down for a little bit of everything. The watch-along worked out great, but thank you all so much. Until next time, we're out.